My name is Andrew St.Pierre White. In 1974, a brand new white Range Rover was born into the White household. I say born because this car really was my dad's baby. It was brand new and the talk of the small English town where I lived. 6 months later, it was put onto a mail ship and we emigrated to South Africa. My first taste of off-roading was in 1975 at Chobe Game Reserve in northern Botswana, and a year later to the Maremi Game Reserve. When we entered South Gate, we signed our names. When we returned a week later, our signature was directly under the one we had made coming in. We had been alone in the park. Four-wheel drives were rare. If you wanted to go into the wilderness, you had to endure the torture of an early Land Rover or Land Cruiser, unless, of course, you were lucky enough to be driving in a softly sprung Range Rover. I should add here that our spares kit consisted of a fan belt. We had no air conditioning, no freezer, let alone a rooftop tent and an angle. This is Third Bridge, Maremi in 1976. The idea of owning my own four-wheel drive lingered until 1982, when I acquired my own baby. Naturally, it was a Range Rover. If I had bought a newer vehicle, I would never have learnt as much as I did about fixing it. The vehicle was the subject of many home movies and photographs, and eventually the cover vehicle of my first book, published in 1993. My much-loved 1971 model, chassis number 2492, was 11 years old when I bought it. Although it was in great condition, it suffered from the problems of many British motor cars of the day. It was a great performer, but unreliable. My first trip where 4x4 was required was to Cozy Bay, but the first one recorded on camera was to Namibia. Concerned about the possibility of getting stuck in the sand, I fitted an electric winch. Now, considering myself to be utterly invincible, I headed off. In retrospect, the damage I did to the environment was shameful, but it was through ignorance. Anyway, you guessed it, I got very, very stuck. Here is me using a winch for the very first time. If only someone had told me about tyre pressures. Oh, and speaking of tyres, I had 3 blowouts like this. This was the first, the cause of which was never conclusively reached. But what makes four-wheel drive special is to discover secret places others cannot reach. In 1985, my vehicle found a useful role in launching a 21-foot yacht built by me and 3 friends. One day, the combination of a missing bell housing cover plate and a leaky rear main oil seal caused the crankcase to suck in water and sand. The result was a complete engine rebuild, which I did with great love and attention to detail. In 1987, I was involved in an accident, flattening a brick wall and a Renault 5 in one go. The damage was severe. Trusting no one else to do the job properly, I lovingly rebuilt the front end, straightened the chassis, applied rust proofing, and with great care put her back together. A safari planned for the following month was to go ahead with a vehicle that was mechanically sound but looking a bit odd. Many seasoned 4x4 drivers will remember the road between Nata and Maun. Remember Kalkriet, rattling for hours on end? Well, this road is now called the Trans-Kalahari Highway. In days gone by, this road was Kalkriet and infamous for wrecking suspensions. I covered this section 9 times before it was tarred. This is on my 5th drive on the road, early 1987. This is the main Francistown Maun Road. We're about 230 kilometers from Maun, and the Makadikati pans are absolutely swamped. And at this point behind us, we've just crossed, they've actually crossed the road. The road was so rough that I used to carry pop rivets to replace lost rivets along the way. Game was everywhere. These young lions were less than 50 kilometers from Maun and well outside any wildlife sanctuary. We're on our way up to Shikawi. It should take us about 4 days to get there. We're carrying about 226 litres of fuel, and the car is taking a hammering. The roads have been absolutely terrible corrugations. The idea was to drive up the western side of the Okavango Delta from Maun via Lake Ngami to Shikawi, and then to Savuti, Moremi, and all the way back to Maun. But things didn't go quite as planned. This is the road on the banks of Lake Ngami. We're having a bit of difficulty in finding the actual shores of the lake, which is to the left of us somewhere. This is Lake Ngami, nothing like I expected. It's thick, heavy thorn trees we've been travelling through for about 3 hours. We've come across a few puddles, but I don't believe that it's the true lake itself. And they're certainly not fed by any dry waterways or anything. So tomorrow morning we'll try and find the actual bed of the lake. Right. This is Lake Ngami. Our guide here, Bob, showed us the way through the bush. We travelled for about 15 minutes through pretty heavy thorn trees. There's absolutely no water at all, but thank God we found it eventually.
Beer of the day. And here comes the bar.
In this book, they quote Livingstone saying that Lake Ngami was a fine stretch of water. So it was a little surprising.
Find a fine stretch of flowers.
We met our guide, Bob, on the way, and he did the great honour of offering me 40 head of cattle for my car. Daybreak at Shikawi on the Okavango River. Because we reached Shikawi 2 days ahead of schedule, we relaxed and found time to hunt for tigers in the deep water. This fish took 3 days to catch. I'm talking about 20 of them. Don't touch him, he will bite you. It's good. Now, I don't know whether I should put him back. Should I put him up? Good. Take away. Good. Next we crossed the Chobe River, traversed the Caprivi Strip to Victoria Falls, where we collected a friend who was joining us. After a brief stop at the falls, we headed back into Botswana and then headed south to Savuti, where we planned to meet a party of friends in another vintage Range Rover coming up from Johannesburg. I chose the less used route via Nogutsar, but this proved to be a bad decision. Every few kilometers, flooded pans blocked our path, and progress soon dropped to walking pace as we tried to find a way around each one, keeping clear of the sticky black mud surrounding them. We're lost. We're in the middle of the Mapani trees. We're on our way to Savuti, but the road has made a detour around some big lakes. And the road is forked here, and there's a bit of a used section here, a bit of an unused section there. So Lou's now gone to find out if this section has been used more than that section. Basically, we don't know where the hell we're pointing. Eventually we'll continue and, with any luck, meet the original road again.
Behind us here is a campsite where we spent a few worrying moments last night. We heard of elephants foraging behind us. The reason why we're here is that we spent 8 hours to do 100 miles yesterday through much swampland and much detouring around full pans in the middle of the road. And we were heading for Savuti, but seeing the condition of the road is so bad, we decided to camp over last night and turn around and head back to Serendela. Now the problem is to find the way back to Serendela. So when we get there, we'll tell you what happens.
Okay, baby. Follow me! Weary of wild animals, walking ahead on foot was the only way to find the track. We found ourselves ploughing in deep sand and losing the vague track.
Very off bloody elephant. Eat the animals.
It wasn't a bad bit. The bad bit where we nearly got stuck in yesterday was much longer than that.
Right, we've just been through the first of the detours, call it Pan 1 on the way back.
Now it took us 20 minutes to get around it. There are a couple more bigger ones than that, I seem to remember. There's another track there. Where? This track. There's the original road. No, the hippo pan.
They're piling out the water, I don't know, it looks like they're doing something to someone under the tree. Those are two hippo mating. Hippo mating only takes place in water. Their young can be born on land or in the water. They have a gestation period of 215 days, and the young are suckled in the water, underwater.
With a rough track behind us and a smoother, easier way ahead, the following morning we made an early start and headed on the main southerly road to Third Bridge in Maremi. On the river road between Serendela and Ngoma Gate, things went horribly wrong. A government Land Cruiser, speeding on the narrow sand track, met us head-on.
Happened while we were travelling along the road to Third Bridge. We're coming round a blind bend, and unfortunately someone in a Land Rover was also coming round a blind bend, and we connected. As you can see, the car is pretty damaged. What we're waiting for now is for the police to arrive, and then the people that we rode into are going to tow us to Ngoma Bridge. From where Helen and I are going to try and get down to Third Bridge to let Mark know that this has happened, for him to come up here and pick us up and tow Lodi back down to Johannesburg.
This is Ngoma Gate. The accident happened just down there, about 2 kilometers. And Helen and Gwyn have gone off to try and get a lift all the way to Third Bridge to meet Mark and his group. And with any luck they'll have some success, and if we can't get this thing actually driving, we might be able to. But if we can't get it driving, get Mark to tow us all the way home.